Single and pretty miserable for about 5 years before I actually moved to San Francisco, which is gay Mecca, which is really good for me because I'm gay and there are people here. And I'd been isolating for a really long time. I worked at this job that just sucked the soul out of me, and I just couldn't quite figure out how I was supposed to do this thing, make money and have a lot of debt and all that stuff that's part of the American dream, and feel like I was living with purpose in my life. And when I moved to San Francisco, I met a couple of people, but not really a whole lot of people. And I think it was one night I had played World of Warcraft in my underwear, and I was drinking wine, and I went to the television and I watched this movie by Jim Carrey called Yes Man, if any of you have ever seen it. And the movie changed my life, seriously.
Can you speak up and into the mic? If we need to raise
I think I could. Is that good?
Awesome. Much better, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this movie, Yes Man, gave me the idea that I should say yes to anything that basically would come along. And it was about that point that one of my new friends sent a sort of innocuous message out that was something like, "Ayahuasca, anybody?" I had no idea what ayahuasca was, so of course I said yes. And it was after about my first 5 or 6 life-changing experiences that a question came to my head, and that was, what would it be like if I decided to go to the jungle by myself for the first time? And I took that into ceremony. And the experience was an awful lot like the whole globe was this big forest and jungle, and it was really scary, and in the middle of it, this tiny little dot was me. And I was lost, and I was frightened, and I didn't know anybody, and it was really kind of terrifying. So it wasn't exactly a no, but it wasn't exactly a yes either. So I decided to go. And I decided to go when the International Amazonian Shamanism Conference was happening in Iquitos, Peru. Because I knew that, you meet some hippies and, different explorers, and you sit in ceremony and you have family, and you have community that builds. So a couple months later, I'm in Iquitos, in the airport, looking at these weird murals of sort of half-naked children dolphin creatures. And if you've ever been to Iquitos, you know that it's a little bit like the Times Square of ayahuasca. There's a lot of tourism that goes on there that's based on ayahuasca. And it's overrun by these motor cars, which are these motorcycles with benches, and they're loud, and there's actually more of them than people, I'm pretty sure, in Iquitos. And it's the primary method of getting around town. And it's hot, and it's sweaty, and I'm the guy who got the hotel room with the air conditioner, because I thought that was a good idea. But I knew that within the first 24 hours, I was going to be drinking ayahuasca with Ron Wheeler-Rappe, the gringo shaman of the Amazon. So I get in a motor car, and it takes me out on the only road that actually leaves Iquitos, which goes about 120 kilometers into the jungle and stops. There's no other way to get into Iquitos other than boat or plane. It's that pretty much remote in the middle of nowhere. And I walk up this dusty trail, and in the middle of the street is this guy sitting at a table. And I tell him in my best English, or Spanish, right? Hola, ¿dónde está la casa del shaman gringo? To which he replies, "Oh, you're looking for Ron." Which was really great because I was about all the Spanish I knew. And he takes me what turns out to be the really long way to Ron's house, and we're talking a little bit of Spanish-English, and not so much is happening. But I get sort of close to the edge of the foresty area, which is I think where Ron is living, and he offers something to me for 20 soles. And he says, perezosa 20 soles. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but show me. And so he takes me into this little village house, and he reaches underneath this bench, and he pulls out this little brown sloth. Like, the sloths are like these, perezosa means slothful or lazy in Spanish, apparently. And he put it on my leg, and the thing just, they move about this fast. So he wrapped his arms around it. Really cute. And then he told me, 20 soles. I'm like, 20 soles? That's like $7. How am I going to take this thing through customs? It's just not And so I tell him in my best Spanish, gracias para no tengo sloth. And he keeps telling me about the sloth, He tells me that I should actually buy and give it to Ron as a gift. And I'm like, oh, gracias, para no tengo sloth. Now, I thought I was saying I don't have a sloth, rather that I don't want a sloth. And I actually told him that I don't have a sloth, which is kind of perfect if you're trying to sell someone a sloth. So eventually this conversation wraps up. He knows I don't know what I'm talking about. I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. And he takes me to Ron's house, which is just across the street. And so I sit there in Ron's house for 2 hours playing Angry Birds, because he wasn't there yet. And I had my iPhone on me, and that's, well, what else am I going to do? And Ron shows up, and he's sort of like this Ozarky pirate. He's a real amazing guy. He is, right? Yeah. He's got this sort of longish hair and kind of like interesting grill and a parrot actually somewhere on the property. And he is the sweetest guy and a powerful ayahuasquero and a good friend. And I tell him that I got offered the sloth. And he's like, oh, that thing. I bought that once before, and about 3 days later, after I put it up in my tree, it ran home. It was a trick sloth. So we get in the motor car, which Ron is driving, and he takes me up to the ceremony site. And we're in the tambo, and I have my first drink of ayahuasca in the jungle. And everything is hot, and it's like we're living in this soup of life. And there's just all these noises in the jungle, because it's loud. Everything is like fucking and eating and dying all the time in this never-ending cycle. And it's just getting hotter, and the humidity is just getting more and more dense. And then all of a sudden, it's like all the water in the air just got sucked out. And there's lightning, and there's thunder, and it turns into rain. And there in the middle of the tambo is this shadowy figure, and then boom, the lightning goes off, and there's Ron pounding on his drum in the middle of the ceremony, doing this shamany thing. And I'm like, this is magic, and this is crazy, and where am I? So ceremony ends, and Ron gets in his motor car. Now, just because ceremony ends doesn't mean you're not still with the medicine, and I am still with the medicine. And we get in the car, and we go down this sandy road that has turned to mud, and we get out, and I'm pushing with one hand, and I've got the drum in the other, because we don't want it to fall. And I'm pushing this motor car up this sandy road, and I'm looking at the sky, and I'm like, where the fuck am I? I might die here. I'm actually all alone, and there is no AAA, and I may not make it out alive. And I make it out alive, obviously. And we get back to his place, and I sleep. And the next day I go to the conference, and I meet some of the most amazing people who live in San Francisco, which is nuts. Apparently Peru and San Francisco have this really intimate relationship. Kind of funny. And I have these amazing ceremonies, and my heart just blows open, and I feel like I've never felt like this at any time before, but my heart just exploded, and I loved everybody, and I loved myself, and I just loved being alive. And these relationships that just formed through these ceremonies and through this time were just really incredibly beautiful and special. But the relationship I was developing with myself through this trip was incredible. And there's a lot of adventure and a lot of crazy things that happen in the jungle. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. But be prepared for chaos and life. And the last ceremony of this conference was again another Ron Wheeler-Rappe ceremony, because I love the guy. And this was the craziest shitstorm of a ceremony I've ever been in. Ever. And there's a guy who's sitting across from me who is just so enraptured, we find out later, with this experience that he is pounding his fists into the cement, and his body is bruised. And he is just loving everything, but it looks really freaking terrifying. And he gets up and he stumbles and he just kind of knocks over the altar a little bit. And John Carlos, Ron's assistant, sits on him and gets a little bite in the leg through the process. And then there's the girl who's never drunk ayahuasca before, and she gets up and she's asking the question for about an hour and a half, what's going on? And where am I? It's not the most silent ceremony I've ever been. And as she's kind of wandering around and taking off parts of her clothing, again, somebody comes and gets her and sits with her. And through this whole thing, I am having the most amazing, beautiful, incredible experience. And the clearest visions I've ever had of what I can only sort of define as this gate opening and these incredible deity energies, this masculine and this feminine. It was very Egyptian-y and clear, and I am just full of love. And I am just ready to meet people and live my life and come out of this weird little hidey hole that I've been in for such a long time. And I am the calm in the center of this crazy storm. I don't know how exactly, but I was totally fine. I even purged just a little. It wasn't like this whole thing. Like, it was actually pretty easy. Normally I'm the crazy loud one in the room. And I really tapped into something deep and beautiful and amazing through this experience. So I come home. And there's my community, these people that I met who live in San Francisco, and they're there. And they're my family now. He's like, Claudia is actually one of these people who's actually at these ceremonies. She can tell you another story, probably, that's pretty close. And we're doing this amazing work together, and this deep healing, and this deep connection. And I just had to go to another continent, apparently, to find the people that were in my backyard. And I eventually did leave the soul-sucking job. I am not doing that anymore. I have a whole different experience, actually helping people make the changes they want in their life. And I decided to update my OkCupid profile. And it was really important to me that the people that I might meet would really understand that I drink ayahuasca. Because it's kind of not something you find all that often in the gay community. There's more of us than you might think, but there's not like this, there's not a whole lot of us. And within about a couple of weeks of updating my profile, I get a message from a guy. And about a week after that, we meet. And it's been about 4 years now, and we're getting married in October. He's sitting right over there. And I know for sure that I would not have met him until I was absolutely ready to meet him. And I wouldn't have been ready to meet him had I not been doing this incredible work and going deep inside the crazy inner world that exists inside of all of us and tapping into what it is that we are, that love and that peace, and everything else, but really just connecting with that and bringing that into the world. And for that, I am incredibly grateful to ayahuasca for being the thing that set me on this path of self-growth